Season 2 of Prehistoric Planet comes out soon, so today I thought I'd show you how to make a Dreadnoughtus puppet. The first thing you're going to need is a Diplodocus puppet. Yes, I know that does sound incredibly reductive, but just bear with me here. I've actually got two of these little guys, and that's so I can make two Dreadnoughtuses to fight each other like they do in the first season of Prehistoric Planet. The second thing you're going to need is an old pair of trousers. I'm using these old jogging bottoms. And finally, you're going to need a lot of orange Pom Poms. The first thing you want to do is mark out where you're going to put your Pom Poms using a piece of chalk. You want each pair of Pom Poms to be the same distance apart from each other. You're using these to simulate the speculative inflatable air sacs on the neck of the Dreadnoughtus. These are not features we know from the fossil record, but they're a nice piece of speculation. You then want to find an appropriately coloured piece of thread and sew each individual pom-pom in place on the trouser leg. This is the most tedious part of the entire process, and it took me days to get all of the pom-poms in place. This time-lapse footage shows the process of me attaching a single pom-pom to this trouser leg. And then you need to remember that I did this another 17 times to just get one Dreadnoughtus neck done. And then you have to do it all over again if you want to make a second Dreadnoughtus. Now, after all 36 pom-poms were attached, I now finally have the swankiest pair of jogging bottoms the world has ever seen, but more importantly, I have two Dreadnoughtuses. And you see, I can make these guys fight each other, but it's quite difficult because they are still connected to each other, so we really need to separate them. So what we're going to need to use is called an unpicker to take the stitches out so we can separate the two trouser legs from each other. This is the second most tedious part of this project, although it doesn't take quite as long as the pom-poms. And after a long period of time, eventually I've got a small hole that I can stick my hand through, and then after a bit more time I finally got a hole that I can stick my head through. This gives me an idea.
That's gonna make no sense to any Americans in my audience.
So eventually we unpick all the way to the waistband, and I had then wanted to unpick all the way along the waistband, but it then took me way too long, so instead I gave up and got a pair of sewing scissors and just cut the rest of the trouser leg off. That now finally gives me two separate trouser legs, but we're not going to stop there. It's time to use a proper sewing machine. So the first thing we need to do is we need to sew up the pockets and then cut those off. Then what we're going to do is we're going to sew a seam around the sides because we don't want the fabric to fray. So we're going to create this quite large seam, about 1 centimetre wide, that will protect it. Lastly, you need to make sure you've tied off all your loose threads, and we're done. We now have two Dreadnoughtuses that can fight each other to the death to their heart's content. But I'm not quite done yet. Firstly, I'm going to change into a different coloured shirt. Then I'm going to shave off this ridiculous beard, and maybe let's change the hair as well. And now finally, I'm going to Comic-Con in London next week, and I'm taking the Dreadnoughtus with me. Well, someone has to represent the Prehistoric Planet fandom.